Hello, everybody, and welcome to Second Cup with Keith. Yes, it's Monday. Yes, it's time for another Second Cup with Keith. If you haven't noticed, I usually go live somewhere between 11 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Sometimes right at 11, sometimes right at 11:30, and sometimes like today, just like to surprise you and jump in at 11:18. So there you go. Anyway, how you guys doing? Good to be here. Hope you can hear me and see me. I'm streaming live right now. If you're listening live, I'm streaming live every Monday on my Facebook page, on the Heresy After Hours Facebook group, on my personal Instagram page, as well as on the Choircast Podcast YouTube channel, which I recommend you subscribe to, because if you do, you will get access to everything that Choircast does live, which is this show on Mondays, Heretic Happy Hour live on Sunday mornings, and the God Squad on Thursday nights, and High Minds, which I think is Fridays, and some other day I don't remember. Wednesday, maybe? I don't know what day it is. Anyway, good to see you, everyone. And as always, this Choircast podcast is brought to you by my book, The Quantum Sayings of Jesus, Decoding the Lost Gospel of Thomas. Slipping down to number 2 on Amazon, but hey, that's still pretty fantastic. I'll take it. After nearly a year of being published and available, it's still doing incredibly strong. So again, thank you everyone who has read that book, shared that book with friends, told people about it word of mouth, left a rating and a review. I have like 111 ratings and reviews on Amazon. Most of those are 5-star reviews. So again, thank you, all of you, for that kindness, because it really means a lot. You really, as authors, we really thrive on readers, right? We need readers who are willing to take the time to do all that, right? Tell people you like it. If you like it, like, share, rate, review, all that stuff on social media. It goes a long, long way. So thank you. So happy Monday, everyone. Can you believe it? February is nearly over. We're in the final week of the month. I cannot believe this year has flown by so quickly. And I don't think it's just me, right? I think a lot of us feel it. Time just seems to fly by. Yeah, Judy says, sunshiny here in Los Angeles. I don't think I knew that you were in LA, Judy. So there you go. I'm glad it's sunshiny. It's very sunshiny here. It's 66 degrees as of a recording time in El Paso, Texas. So we're going to be warming up a little bit here. I know some people are going through this Arctic blast kind of thing, or whatever they're calling it. So yeah, we're kind of spoiled, I guess, in this way when it comes to the weather. Judy says she's near Long Beach, which is great. Yes, my oldest, Dylan, lived in Long Beach for a while. I have some friends that lived in Long Beach. Laugh Anyway says gray on San Jose. Or probably that means in San Jose, California. All right, so my listeners right now are in California. How you guys doing? So I'm just going to, I was trying to decide, I'm always trying to decide, okay, what should I talk about on this Second Cup with Keith live stream? What can I talk about? A couple of things. I'll give you a little bit of history, like what's going on with me right now. And then we'll jump in to the topic I want to discuss. So every Sunday, for my Patreon subscribers, shout out to all my Patreon subscribers. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your support. So yeah, every Sunday morning, most every Sunday morning, I do what's called the Imperfect Signals newsletter for all my Patreon subscribers. And yesterday's episode of the of these sometimes infrequent imperfect signals. That's why I called it imperfect signals. It gives me permission to sometimes not do one. So in addition, what I do is just kind of catch everybody up, like, what am I working on? What's happening? How things are going. And I just wanted to share this with Second Cup listeners too. That so you guys know hopefully I've been doing every Friday for over a year now, probably coming on maybe almost 2 years. I've been doing this thing every Friday called the Inner Circle. And every Friday I publish an article for people, again, who subscribe to that Inner Circle. And you can subscribe to my Patreon or through Patheos. Either way, you'll get it either way. It's like $4 a month, $5 on Patheos, $4 on Patreon every month. So if you sign up at the $4 a month level, you get every Friday a post that I do only, again, for those people. And so I started off doing the Gospel of Thomas. That's where the book came from, the Quantum Sayings of Jesus. I've just finished doing the Gospel of Mary and the Gospel of Truth, and that book is wrapping up now. Should publish in May. That is the plan. So having finished those, I'm kind of at this point trying to decide what I'm going to do. And I think I said last time that I was going to be starting the Gospel of Philip. But then on Friday last week, I sat down to write what would have been the really kind of going into the first chapter of the Gospel of Philip, and I just couldn't do it. I read through it. I mean, I understood it. I kind of knew what I could say, but I just really wasn't feeling it. And so I think so. Instead, what I did was I just wrote sort of like a little bit of an overview on the Gospel of Judas. I just got this great book by Elaine Pagels and Karen King called Reading Judas. Picked it up for $2 at a local used bookstore, totally by surprise. And so I wrote that. But where I'm at right now in the weekly Friday Inner Circle thing is that I don't really know exactly what my plan is. I have 3 options. One is I could read through ahead of time, just sort of read through the Gospel of Philip and sort of cherry pick the passages from the Gospel of Philip that I find useful or valuable or interesting, something that could truly be called sort of a quantum perspective in the Gospel of Philip. Because I feel like overall, the Gospel of Philip really kind of doesn't represent like 100% this kind of view. And I don't want to get bogged down in the kind of backwards theology that's reflected in some of what I read in Philip. I just don't want to go. That's what I just said. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get into this. That's not what I'm excited about doing. So that's one option, right? I should sort of just like read through Gospel of Philip, grab the sections that I think are interesting and worth talking about, and write my articles about those portions, those select passages from the Gospel of Philip that I think are worthwhile. So that's one option. The other option is switching over to the Gospel of Judas. Now, the Gospel of Judas is also not anything quantum at all. But what I find really fascinating about the Gospel of Judas, here's why the Gospel of Judas is valuable. I said this in the post that I wrote on Friday. What is fascinating about the Gospel of Judas is it's not where it quotes Jesus. Like, it's not like you wouldn't read the Gospel of Judas if you were looking for a more accurate picture of the historical Jesus and the kinds of things that Jesus talked about and taught. That would be more like, if that's what you're interested in, I would say read the Gospel of Thomas, maybe the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Mary. If you were interested in more of those esoteric kind of teachings, the sort of secret teachings of Jesus, not Mark, but Thomas and Mary, and portions of Philip. But Judas, no, that's not what the Gospel of Judas is about. That's not what it's doing. That's not why I would be interested in reading it or writing about it. But what is interesting about the Gospel of Judas is it's a really fascinating picture. If you want to know what certain early Christians felt, how they reacted to what they were observing, which was that certain other Christians were attempting to sort of fashion a version of Jesus that fit their preordained religious narrative. You know what I'm saying? In other words, what became Orthodox Christianity, a religion. Like, I don't think Jesus came to start a religion. And so there were certain early Christians who agreed with that. Like, we're just going to follow the teachings of Jesus, but we're not looking to incorporate Jesus into some Judeo Christian sort of hybrid. We're not interested in turning Jesus into this sort of prophetic Jewish Messiah. We're not looking for Jesus to be the mascot or the figurehead for this new religion that we're starting. And so this gives me hope that there really were early Christians that while this was going on, they objected to it. They pushed back. They were saying, no, 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 no. What are you doing? This isn't what Jesus was really about. This isn't what Jesus wanted. And the Gospel of Judas is sort of an allegorical, metaphorical, fan fiction, if you will, where the Jesus that they knew, how they imagined that the Jesus that they knew and loved and followed would have responded to that kind of a thing, right? He would have mocked that. He would have laughed at it. He would have pointed out the flaws in that way of thinking. And he would have wanted to subvert any attempts to turn him into this figurehead or this mascot for this really man-made movement and religion, right? A religious movement. And so in that sense, the Gospel of Judas is very fascinating, very interesting. If you can read it through that lens, it's really cool. And again, I've just started reading this book by Elaine Pagels and Karen King. But in their introduction, that's kind of what they point out. And that's what I got intrigued about. So if I decide to continue with Judas in the inner circle, I will have to decide this week, obviously. Then that means I'm going to have to dive into this book a little more and start reading it myself, reading the text of the Gospel of Judas and looking for ways where I see clues of that kind of thing happening, right? That's my second option. And my third option is I don't do Philip and I don't do Judas. And instead, what I do every Friday is just continue to write articles that in general continue to talk about this idea of non-duality, of oneness and connection, shared humanity, shared divinity, etc. And that also appeals to me, right? So I haven't decided 100% what I'm going to do, but that's kind of where I'm at the moment, trying to figure out what I want to do, among other things. So that's just one little thing that I talked about in the newsletter this week that I wanted to share with all of you before I jump into this episode. So a little preamble there. Hope you didn't mind. Here's what I'm going to talk about. So yesterday I spoke at Unity Church here in El Paso. I have been speaking there monthly for quite a while. And they're wonderful people. I'm new to this organization. I'm new to the Unity Church as a movement, as a denomination. They're part of the New Thought movement. And you can look them up. It's not Unitarian. Don't get confused. It's not Unitarianism. It's unity. Um, Wonderful people. Just some of the best people I've met in my life. Just kind, generous, loving, genuine, humble, loving, welcoming people. Um, and they're already on. They're ahead of me. They've been here longer than I've been here, which is where I am now. This idea of oneness and connection and all that, right? So it's really refreshing and beautiful to go and speak there, um, and to be allowed to kind of speak into these things, which are new to me, but are kind of like things that they already knew. And maybe that's why they like me coming, because it is new to me, it's still exciting to me, and maybe it breathes new life for them into some of these ideas that they've um, they've adopted a long time ago. Anyway, though, it's just really a wonderful blessing to be there, to be with them. And so I spoke yesterday, and what I talked about was empathy, right? Um, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about empathy, I guess, in this episode. Now, a few months ago, if you scroll back on the Second Cup with Keith podcast, if you go to the podcast page, or you follow the podcast on Spotify or Podbean or whatever, if you scroll back, probably like 10 or 15 episodes back, I did an episode on the power of empathy. So it's not it's not like a new thing, like I've never talked about it before. But I thought it was just a timely message. It's something I think we all need to hear, about the power of empathy. So I started out just kind of talking about Nelson Mandela and about how, this guy, Nelson Mandela, was put in prison, basically for just protesting injustice in South Africa, apartheid, which is a very racist, white, supremacist government, was put in jail for speaking out and protesting against that. Spent 27 years in jail, but when he was finally released, rather than seeking revenge, what Mandela did was something really beautiful, which was he was driven by empathy and compassion. And he wanted to understand the fear that motivated the white South African government. And he dedicated himself and his presidency towards a national unity. So rather than become the president for Black South Africans and sort of marginalized white South Africans who had oppressed them, he wanted to be the president of South Africa, both Blacks and whites, and to bring unity. And he did that through compassion. Bishop Tutu was a big part of that. They had a series of court cases where they put people on trial. They put white police and government officials who had participated in oppressive crimes, really, against Black South Africans. But the purpose of the trial wasn't to condemn these people. It wasn't to get revenge on these people. It was genuinely for healing and understanding. And so there were a lot of tears. There was a lot of forgiveness. It's unbelievable. It's unprecedented what Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu did to bring healing to South Africa and to end this apartheid, which sadly is kind of making a comeback now that they're both kind of out of the picture. But just, the way that Mandela was driven by empathy, after 27 years of being falsely imprisoned, essentially, was pretty beautiful and pretty powerful. And it really did change for decades, right? It brought change and transformation to that community. And we kind of need that again. But empathy really is. It's more than a feeling. When we talk about empathy, empathy is not just feeling sorry for somebody. Empathy is really taking the time to understand that other person without judgment. There's a quote by Mother Teresa where she says, "If you judge people, you have no time to love them." And I think it's really true. We need to have empathy to really share another person's, understand and share and experience other people's emotions without judging them. You can do one or the other. In other words, you can't love them and judge them, and you can't judge them and love them. So empathy, I found a definition of empathy, that empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself. And empathy is a skill that we can learn to cultivate. And it creates these ripple effects that are amazing, pretty amazing. Brené Brown also says empathy has no script. There is no right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, connecting emotionally, and communicating that incredibly healing message. You are not alone. Because we all feel alone at some point, right? We all feel that we're not being heard, that we're not being seen, that we're not being listened to, right? And it's true. There's something called active listening that Stephen Covey, I don't think he invented it, but he championed it. He says, when you show deep empathy towards other people, their defensive energy goes down and positive energy replaces it. And that's one of the practices he recommends, which is active listening. In other words, listening to other people, not for a gap so you can jump in and make your point, or to correct them or anything like that, right? To really to listen in order to understand them. And he does this reflecting technique, right? He recommends this reflecting technique. And that's what active listening is that when someone speaks, you before you respond, you say, what I hear you saying is this. And you keep doing that until they finally say, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And so if you first say, what I hear is this, and they say, no, that's not what I'm saying, then you let them explain themselves again, and then you say, okay, so now what I hear you saying is this. And you do that until you genuinely understand it, and then and only then would you really offer any kind of response. So I used some other examples of empathy that I thought were really significant in history. In 2019, if you remember, there were two shootings at mosques, two different mosques in New Zealand, Christchurch, New Zealand, and the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, responded with incredible empathy. She wore it in a job as a woman when she would go to visit these families, even though she's not Muslim, but in respect for them and their customs, she put on the hijab and went and visited them and comforted them and listened to them and offered her condolences and empathy and compassion. It was beautiful, and it really is something that people worldwide were able to see how her empathy was this powerful example of what leadership should really look like, right? Even at that high level. And really all she was saying to them was, all of us see you. All of us feel compassion and empathy towards your suffering. And we understand how you feel. We want to understand how you feel, what you're going through. So I did also talk a little bit about leadership. And I was hesitant to do that because I do think there's way too much emphasis on leadership nowadays. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't Dear says my microphone sound is not good. I'm sorry. Let me turn myself down a little bit. Thank you. Hopefully that's better. Let me know if that's any better. My microphone's been doing weird things lately. So somebody give me that's good or it's still the same if you can. Anyway, so talking about leadership, but okay. So sorry, Judy says, Keith, your sound is glitching, and Facebook users are experiencing sound issues as well. Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, that sucks. Hopefully it's recording better than. Yep. Okay, so John Sinky says there's still an echo. So Laugh Anyway says, we know everyone is going through struggles we cannot see from the surface. With compassion, we consider their point of view. So Dear says nope, but I guess nope means it's answering, is it any better? Okay. How's that? Does that Does that fix anything? I'm double checking my settings. Everything's plugged in. Test. Okay, well, I'm just gonna keep going. And hopefully it's recording well. So if you need to go back and listen to the podcast later, I can move my microphone away a little bit too and give a little distance there. Okay. We're talking about leadership again. I feel like leadership is way too it's way too overstressed. You know what I mean? Too many people want to be leaders. One of my biggest pet peeves. I get this ad all the time on Facebook. So I'm on somebody's list somewhere. I get these ads all the time. It's like, do you feel called to pastor other pastors? It's a real ad for like a real service or something. So every time I see it, I always respond. Leave a comment on the ad, and I say, no, but I do feel called to pastor the pastors of the pastors who pastor other pastors and the pastors who pastor those pastors. Because I just think it's so ridiculous. There's just too much of an emphasis on leadership, and usually it's the kind of leadership that people emphasize are sort of like, I'm the boss. Everybody wants to be the boss, right? Everyone wants to be this important person with all the answers. So that kind of drives me crazy. But Simon Sinek is someone I really like. If you don't know who he is, you might remember, you might have seen, he did some videos a while back about knowing your why. If you haven't seen those videos, you should watch them, because it's not just something that I think is helpful for people who have businesses or running a business. I think it's helpful for individuals to take time to figure out your why. Why do you do what you do? Don't talk about what you do. Talk about, think about, consider, and lead with why you do what you do. Right? Being led by your values, essentially. Anyway, so Simon Sinek, that guy, the know your why guy, he said leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of the ones in your charge. And I totally believe that. So we need to learn to listen more than we speak, and to lead not from the top down, but from the bottom up. Right? Jesus modeled this beautifully, like washing feet. That's exactly it. And so there are things we can do to cultivate empathy in our everyday life, right? And I just talked about the main thing, I think, really is learning to listen. So I also had to talk about one of my favorite authors, Philip K. Dick. And Philip K. Dick, actually, this is the first novel of his I ever read. This is the movie Blade Runner, which I'm obsessed with, this movie, Blade Runner. But the novel that Blade Runner is based on it's called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And one of the main points of the novel is that in the future, technology has gotten so advanced that they can create androids that are so lifelike, so human-like, that there's only one way to tell them apart from a regular human being, and that's by giving them an empathy test. Because they're human in every way, but they lack empathy. Now, what's fascinating is where he got the idea for the novel. And so Philip K. Dick was watching on television, and he was watching, probably reruns, right, of the Nuremberg trials. And this was after World War II, and they put Nazis on trial. And this time, this trial was about finding them guilty of crimes, and I don't even know, some people might have been executed for their crimes. So this was pretty serious stuff. And but during the trial, one of the Nazi guards was pushing back as he was being put on trial, and as he was being cross-examined, and said, you people don't understand. I suffer too. My fellow guards and soldiers, we suffer too in these concentration camps. And they said, well, what way did you suffer? And he said, well, because we couldn't sleep at night because of all these children that kept crying all night long, and they wouldn't let us sleep. And when Phil heard that, he just shook his head and he said, I'm looking at someone who looks like a human being and sounds like a human being in every way, except they're missing this one critical, important thing that makes you truly human, and that was empathy. And that gave me the idea, right? Like, to write a story about androids that we could build that would look human in every way, except they would lack this one crucial thing that really is at the core. It's what makes us human, and that's our empathy. So empathy is a necessity for us if we want to hold on to our humanity, right? This is something Jesus, I think, is talking to us about in Matthew 25 when he talks about this judgment day, right? This great day of judgment where all the nations are brought together, and they are there's a distinction made between those who have empathy and those who don't, and the reward goes to those who had empathy. And so that's not about their religion, it's not about their belief system, their denominations, their doctrines, how much of the Bible they read, how often they attended church, any of those things. Jesus says, here's the only thing that will ever matter when it all comes down to it. Here's what's going to matter. Did you have empathy for your fellow man? And when you did have empathy for other human beings, when you saw someone hungry or thirsty or naked or lonely, how did you respond? And the ways that you respond is the ways that you would treat God, right? Whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done it to me. So embedded in that, I think it's really just an allegory that he's using. He's wanting to capture their attention and tell this little sort of parable and say, at the end of your life, what's going to matter to God is did you show love for God in the ways that you showed love for other people, and empathy and compassion for other people. Okay, it's really just another empathy test at the end of the day, but kind of instead of a science fiction setting, it's put in sort of this religious setting. Same kind of idea, but essentially the idea is that we should be the kind of people who are incapable of seeing other people suffering and moving on and doing nothing, right? So yeah, can anyone let me know if my connection is any better now? Hopefully it's not giving you trouble anymore. I hope. Okay. So I want to tell another story. I didn't tell this story yesterday, actually. I didn't have the time. But and if you're unfamiliar with what I'm about to talk about, I encourage you to look it up. You can probably Google this. There's a comedian. Her name is Sarah Silverman. This has been years ago, at least 4 or 5 years ago, I think. And she was on Twitter. She posted something, and this guy came back, just a troll, right? He came back and it was like insulting her and cussing her out and calling her all kinds of horrible names. And she responded with compassion, like, hey, why are you so angry? And I'm not sure I understand why you're feeling this way. And she did not respond with anger. She responded with humility and with empathy. And then I think eventually, because he wasn't answering the question she was asking, she went on his Twitter feed and saw that in the past he had posted about he had an accident, he had a back injury. He couldn't afford, his insurance didn't pay out, so he lost his job. And anyway, he was still in a lot of pain. And so then she started responding, hey, I've had back pain before too. I know this really hurts. I'm sure this has a lot to do with the way you're feeling right now. And I just want you to know I'm really sorry. And the more she just continued to show empathy to him, he eventually broke down and then started talking to her about his injury and talking to her about his pain and talking to her about his frustrations. And she eventually reached out again in this conversation she had with this person and started asking, hey, any of my followers who are, keeping up with this conversation here, can you help out my friend here? Right. I think he lived in Houston. And anyway, someone in Houston who was a doctor said, don't worry, I'm going to take care of him. I've already contacted him, sent him a private message, and we're going to help this person. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful example, a real world example of how empathy broke down this guy's defenses. And by the end, he came back finally and apologized for the way he talked to her. And it was beautiful. It was a healing moment, and a beautiful real world example of um, empathy, right? Just breaking through. So I'm getting notes now that my sound is better. Thank you, Judy. The glitching is gone. Eureka. Alan says, John Sinke says, sound is better for me. Doa Deer says, now it's okay. Okay, good. I would probably just have my volume too loud. And they don't have a dashboard here on StreamYard, which is the program I use, that sort of shows you levels. Like when we use Riverside, you can see levels. You can kind of see if you're peaking or something. So that's probably me. I apologize. So yeah, I just think empathy is something that's more powerful than we realize, right? I think empathy is really vital to the development of human spiritual consciousness, right? The raising of human consciousness. People who have awakened to the reality of oneness and who really daily operate in this level of the reality of oneness and the illusion of separation and non-duality. These are the mystics, right? These are the prophets. These are the people in our world who are at the same time very easily moved and sensitive to the needs of people around them. In other words, they become empathic people, and the empathy that they feel is part of why they're able to operate at this level, right? Because if you think about it, the more connected you are to the reality of shared divinity and shared humanity, the more you're going to react and respond to the suffering of humanity around you, right? You just can't help it. So empathy goes hand in hand with this awareness. And so, and in other words, if you're thinking, Keith, I like when you talk about oneness and connection. I like when you talk about shared humanity and shared divinity. I want to be more aware of that. I want to be more like that, right? I want to develop sort of a spiritual discipline. I want to raise my consciousness to this level where I really can be more aware of this reality, right? Here's the secret: work on your empathy. Focus on having more empathy. Because the more you develop your empathy, the more you're going to develop an awareness of that connection in your everyday life, that other human beings around you. And it's not always bad. It's not always suffering, right? Empathy sometimes is other people are joyful and you feel their joy, right? Other people are excited. You feel their excitement because you're connected, right? You have an awareness of that connection. And now you're experiencing sort of that psychological, emotional, spiritual feedback from that other person. I don't mean feedback in a negative way. I mean feedback in a positive way, right? And again, it can also be, I will say though, sometimes for some people that empathy can be negative, right? If you're constantly surrounded by negative people, then you're always picking up those negative vibes, and it really can bring you down because you can't turn off your empathy, right? And I don't think you really want to, but what you might need to do is take a break once in a while, right? Go and try to be around people who are more positive and upbeat, and so you can share in their positive energy, their joyful energy, their excited energy, right? Their optimistic energy, and not always be, being brought down by people who might be more giving you this sort of negative energy that your empathy is, again, it's just like an open switch, right? An open line. And you're going to be receiving whatever they're being sent out to you. Like your antennas are up. And so you're catching whatever is out there. But, I would say our world today, we really need people who have more empathy. We need people who allow both the beauty of the world and the suffering of humanity to draw their hearts deeper into this divine perspective and this shared humanity, because that's what empowers all of us to continue the work of transforming the world and experiencing transformation for ourselves. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say on the topic. I guess I want to challenge all of us to practice empathy, to work on having more empathy for other people. A big part of that is learning to listen, right, without judgment, to practice active listening. Do all that you can to take the time to, while you're listening, put yourself in other people's shoes, right? Really learn how to see yourself in the other person. And then notice the ways that compassion and empathy inspire you to respond in certain ways. I think that's really important. And it's also important, I think, too, to reflect on the ways that empathy has impacted your life and the lives of people around you, right? So yeah, that's basically it. Joanne McAfee, my friend, she says, stopping by to say hi. Hello, Joanne. John Sinke says, when I started embracing non-duality, I found I could much more easily love people who are different from me. Yeah, that's really great. Alan says, beautiful. Judy says, the Holy Spirit can protect us from energy vampires. Yeah, I mean, but we have to watch out for that, right? And sometimes it's just about being aware that, there are these sort of energy vampires. By the way, though, that's also just part of that, being susceptible to energy vampires. I'm an introvert, and the thing about being an introvert is, or I should say that the difference between an extrovert and an introvert. An extrovert gains energy by being with other people, right? So extroverts love crowds, extroverts love parties, extroverts love just being around other people because that energizes them, right? They just kind of suck up the energy from the room and from being around and interacting with other people. An introvert is the direct opposite of that. An introvert gets energy really by being alone. An introvert needs to be alone. Go into your room, shut the door, go into your closet, shut the door, meditate, listen to music, sit in silence, or go outside, take a walk in nature, maybe read some poetry, read a book. Like that's how someone who's an introvert, that's how you recharge your energy. And then when you get in crowds of people is when your energy levels start going down, right? I am what's called I'm an extroverted introvert. That means at my core, I'm an introvert. So those rules I just described apply to me. I get my energy from being alone, and being with other people sucks the energy out of me. But over time, I have learned to be an extroverted introvert, meaning I can be extroverted without it draining me so quickly. You know what I mean? So I've sort of built up my tolerance over time. I think house church helped me do that because our house church meetings would go anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, sometimes all day. We would meet at breakfast, we would have lunch, and sometimes people would still be in my house at like 4 or 5 o'clock, right? Not all the time. And I could usually I got to where I could make it from breakfast to lunch and maybe after lunch, but then I started to hit the wall, right? 4 hours, that was kind of my limit, right? And then I would just go leave. I have to go to the bathroom or something, right? But what I really do is just go in the bathroom or go in my bedroom and shut the door and just lay on the bed and just like, you know, and start to recharge a little bit so I could go out and spend another hour or two. So that's just my daily reality. I'm better at it. I can handle it for much longer periods of time before it starts to be a problem for me. But it's still there. You know what I mean? So yeah, Judy says totally me. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, so introverts sort of generate their own energy. Extroverts, I don't mean this in a bad way, but extroverts do kind of like suck energy from other people. And it's just, you can't help that. That's just the way you're wired, right? In some ways, I wish I could be more extroverted, but even when I'm being an extrovert, I'm sort of pretending, right? I'm playing the role of an extrovert, and I can do that for an extended period of time. But the truth is, the entire time my energies are going down, down, down. So that's not what an extrovert does. A real extrovert, a true extrovert, their energy is going up, up, up. The more they're with other people. Yeah, Judy says it takes practice. That's right. Yeah. All right. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for listening. I apologize for the sound problems at the beginning. I hope they didn't affect anything on the podcast. I'll have to listen back before I upload. But I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you have a great day this week, a great week, a great day today, and a great week ahead. We'll see you on Heretic Happy Hour tomorrow. There's a new episode coming out tomorrow. We'll see you on the bonus show on Friday, and we'll see you on Sunday, right? And of course, I will see you on Facebook in between. Love you guys. Love you, Alan. Love you, Judy. Thank you all so much. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.